doing book reviews on Goodreads, which I'm still going to be doing, but sometimes I just got a little bit sick of typing and figured it might be easier if I just talked about books on a camera. But I'm not quite camera comfortable yet, so we'll just see how this goes. So today I'm going to be reviewing this Neil Gaiman book, Neverwhere, which I liked. I started reading it because Neil Gaiman's a favorite author of mine. He's one of my favorite modern authors, and I've read a few books just at random, reading the backs, thinking they look interesting, or reading reviews, and kind of selecting the ones that people are talking about. But after liking all those, I figured it might be nice to go back to the very beginning and just sort of see where it started and track him as an author, seeing how he developed. And technically before this was Good Omens, there was his first real novel, but he did that with Terry Pratchett, and I would much rather start where he started writing books on his own and then perhaps track back to the Terry Pratchett book and see where he influenced that. But I first wanted to just get his raw style at the very beginning. And Neverwhere was good. So pretty much it's about a guy, Richard, living in London, or in this book, London Above. We got two different worlds, but we'll get to that later. It's about Richard, who's living in London Above, and he's sick of his life. He's got a girlfriend who is naggy, mostly because he's really lazy. He doesn't really like doing anything. He just kind of goes with the flow, or just whatever's pulling him around. And even throughout the story, we never really see him make very many decisions. He just lets himself be dragged around, even down to his collections. He's got this expansive troll figure collection, which started not because he had any interest in trolls, but because he found one on the street, picked it up, put it on his desk, and a bunch of people started giving him troll figures thinking that he liked them. His girlfriend he met at an art museum, and he was there just trying to find his co-workers, but getting distracted with a work of art, not really caring about it, but just kind of looking at it, and her thinking that he was looking at it because he was interested and talking to him about it, and she wanted to go out with him, so she did, and he was okay with it just because, like I said, he just gets pulled around. And one night he meets a girl, Door, I think. Yeah, Door, sorry. It's been about a month since I read this. I just figured it'd be a good first video to watch, because then I'll be reviewing all the Neil Gaiman books as I read them individually. And sorry that I keep looking down at this. This is kind of a bad habit. I'm just going to keep this book on the side. So he meets Door, and they go into a fantasy world where she's got her own things that she's after, and he kind of joins in, continuing that theme of him never making decisions for himself. And he kind of just gets dragged around on her adventure to find some sort of key because someone killed her family. She doesn't know who. She wants to know who because it's her family. In order to do so, she needs to have this key, which is this whole ordeal with some angel knowing who killed her family, but the angel won't tell her who killed her family until she gets the key, which I get kind of sick of that sort of conflict in books where the only reason they're running around doing things is because they go to one person who sends them to another, and that person says they will only help them if they go and do this, they go to do that, but that thing right there that they're going to do sends them to something else, which sends them to something else, and then they kind of hit them all along the way back to where they started, and then they finally get what they wanted, but there's never a progression towards their goal other than just kind of spiraling out. But it's entertaining in the process. Thankfully, Neil Gaiman's a really good writer. He's got a really captivating voice. It's very friendly, sort of like reading a fantasy version of Mark Twain. And I know he's said in quite a few of his posts that Mark Twain interested him as a kid and really influenced his work. So I can see that. It's very conversational, very friendly, just like he's sitting there talking to you. He's very present in his wording. You know, you definitely feel like you're reading a narrator instead of just being enthralled in the action, but never in a way that's annoying. It's like I said, it's very warm. So with that, and just he's good at creating conflict. The conflict hitting the characters. I don't know why I said Caros. The conflict hitting the characters internally, them having revelations. So it's always interesting. They're always being developed. It's a bummer that you don't really care too much about them going and getting the key. Really, because Dor has no connection with the key. She wants to know who murdered her family. She's only going after the key because the angel wants her to. So the only connection with her and the key is the key to finding out the mystery. Or not finding out the mystery, solving the mystery. So the only way to really make that work is for the book to continuously be reminding us that she's doing this because she wants to know the murderer of her parents. But I didn't really feel like it did that enough, so you feel like she's just going and getting a key that means nothing to her and means more to somebody else. Neil Gaiman really never focuses on that reliance on the key to solve the true conflict of the story. And then there's the main character, Richard. Keep in mind, Dor's just a side. She's a very prevalent character, but she is still a supporting character. In the way where the real book is about Richard being pulled around in every which direction. And while it works, it's not the most engaging plot. He does it very well. He always sticks to the character of Richard. But if you're trying to write a story, stories really are someone trying to achieve a goal and conflicts getting in the way and kind of bending that progress into other things. And Richard's goal is just to not do anything, and the conflicts are people pulling him around, making that very hard because he's by force having to do things as he's pulled into this fantasy world. I forgot to mention that. So he's in this fantasy world because Dor leads him in, and kind of leaves his other world. They forget about him. He's in this fantasy world now. Sorry for forgetting to mention that very important part of the plot. So he's just kind of pulled around. He wants to get back home so he can just continue his life of not doing anything. And then, as you would guess, throughout the story, he starts getting a little bit more adamant about doing things. You know, he starts becoming interested in doing things for himself. I'm not going to ruin anything for you, but he does change. It's not as because I think it would be pretty boring if the whole thing was just him not wanting to do anything. So all in all, it was a pretty good book. It's not anywhere near as good as his later books like Stardust or my favorite, The Graveyard Book. Right now, it's my favorite. As I'm reading all these, maybe I'll find some of the other ones better. I've heard great things about American Gods, and I've actually not read that one yet, which is weird because that's usually what people start with. But it's very developmental. I think Neil Gaiman really likes the idea of the protagonist being pulled in a bunch of different directions, but in his later books he finds out how to do that in a more engaging way. And while this is perfectly engaging, sometimes you just don't feel the same goals as the character, which I think is because of how removed the key feels. And moving on to another thing about this book, it works on a very symbolic level. It's very deep. The whole point of the book is it's talking about London and how it was or is. I don't really know much about London, but it seemed to me that it was talking all about the problem with class and how there are people who are successful and people who are not, who are on the street, and how easily they're forgotten about. How if they're not making it, they're just kind of invisible. And it makes that metaphor concrete by someone actually going invisible to the world, by having another world within London. So there's London above and there's London below, and London below is filled with people who have slipped through the cracks and have been forgotten about. So it takes that metaphor and makes it concrete and shows how it's kind of chaotic in London below. It's kind of chaotic with the lower class system, but ultimately they have a better community. They're a lot more happy. Everything in London above is portrayed as very fake, very unfulfilling. Richard never feels fulfilled until he's with these people in London below. He never learns to care about life until it's at risk. He's having to work in order to live. So great commentary on how we can be affected when everything just kind of handed to us on a platter, and also saying that we shouldn't be forgetting about these people, and how wrong it is that if you're not successful, you don't mean anything to the world. So, yeah, this is my first review. I hope it went okay. Leave comments for those of you who find me. I hope to be posting more soon. I've got 2 projects going right now. I've got this Neil Gaiman project where I'm just working through all of his books. And I also have a project I'm doing right now with horror literature, where I'm starting with where it all began, the Gothic novels and the Romantics. I'm starting with the very first ever Gothic novel, The Castle of Otranto, which I've already read, and I'll be reviewing that soon. And just working through all of the important developmental pieces from where it all began, the beginning of Gothic, up until present day. And then from there, I'll be planning on reviewing a large majority of the horror novels that come out, because that's just an interest of mine. I've always loved the horror genre, whether in movies, video games, books. I've even liked some horror music. So those are my 2 things. So you can expect to be hearing about The Castle of Otranto very soon. And right now I'm reading Vithek, I don't know how to pronounce it, by William Beckford, which is the next developmental book in the horror genre, which is so far kind of the Islamic version of Dante's Inferno, or at least that's how I'm reading it. So you can expect those to be up soon. As I finish Vithek, I'll be reviewing that. I'll be reviewing Castle of Otranto, and then the next Neil Gaiman book. So, thanks for watching. And I'll see you guys soon.